Next week, the Murray-Darling Basin Authority will release its long-anticipated plan for a sustainable future of the basin. Last year, a guide to the plan received such a hostile response from irrigation communities that it was quickly withdrawn while two separate inquiries were held. Now, after 10 months of consultation, a revised plan is ready, along with a new strategy for rolling it out. The flashpoint again will be the amount of water that's allocated for environmental flows at the expense of irrigation. Mike Sexton reports.
If there is any irony in the politics of water, then it's that the latest attempt to find a sustainable future for the Murray-Darling Basin takes place as the rivers and wetlands are flush.
It seems to take the urgency out of the discussion, and that's a concern because we all have short memories.
The Blowering and Burrinjuck dams outside Canberra that feed the Murrumbidgee River are at 90% of capacity, while the Hume Dam near Albury-Wodonga, which is one of the main drivers of the Murray River, is at 93%. With the irrigation season well underway, allocations to farmers in the Murray and Murrumbidgee valleys this year is virtually 100%, as water is released from these dams.
What you'll see with that is a lot of plantings of annual croppings, so things like rice and cotton will generally only be grown when water is absolutely abundant, as it is this year, and in terms of droughts and flooding rains, we're very much in the flooding rains part of the cycle.
It isn't only the crops that are getting a big drop. Over the next few months, more than 100 gigalitres or 100 billion litres of water will be released for the environment. One place to benefit will be the Barmah-Millewa Forest, the largest stretch of red gums in the country that straddles the New South Wales-Victorian border near Deniliquin.
Native fish have been breeding and then have had enough food to grow into bigger fish. We've had red gum that have had a big drink, for the first time in a decade or so. We all have also had some of the salinity being flushed from the river system, which is also a really good thing.
Next week, the Murray-Darling Basin Authority releases its draft plan, a document devised during the worst drought in recorded history and one that seeks to find a balance between competing needs for water.
We are of the view that we're heading into a drier climate and we need to have our water balanced differently so that the environment is more resilient in the next drought, whether the next drought is 2 years away or 12 years away. We do not want to go through what we've just been through.
Get out of here and let us alone!
For better or worse, the enduring image of the Basin Authority's first attempt at a plan was it being torched in the streets of Griffith in the New South Wales Riverina by angry irrigators fearing they would lose as much as a third of their water entitlements. That was only a guide to the draft plan. Now, after 10 months of consultation, a revised plan will be released next Monday.
Have they heard what people have said? Have they taken on board the suggestions that people have made? And has there been a real change between the guide to the Murray-Darling Basin Plan and what will be released as a draft? From our understanding to date, the change is not particularly significant and most certainly isn't enough to date to see it supported.
We certainly learnt lessons, and as I've said many times, we were really devastated by that reaction and response, which was in no way what was even anticipated or intended.
The authority chair, Mike Taylor, resigned in the wake of the backlash and was replaced by former New South Wales Government Minister Craig Knowles, who's taking a low-key approach to the release of the plan. Major players have all been briefed on what to expect, including New South Wales Irrigators Council CEO Andrew Gregson.
We know that the majority of the impacts are to be visited in the Southern Connected System. That's the Murrumbidgee, the Murray and the Goulburn primarily. In percentage terms, you're still looking at a similar size reduction in productive water availability to what we saw under the guide. And given those similarities, I suspect that the response from those communities will probably be very similar as well.
The major criticism of the previous basin guide was that it drew on science without addressing the social and economic impact of water changes. The science said 4,000 gigalitres was needed to keep the rivers in good health. It now seems that figure will be initially set at 2,800.
We reached a political compact which essentially was to get a Murray-Darling Basin Authority to run the river on the basis of science, not on the basis of politics. We thought that meant that the river would get what it needs to be healthy and then the rest would be divided up amongst the other users. That's the deal we signed up to.
New South Australian Premier Jay Weatherill says he won't sign up to a deal he believes is inadequate. His state has borne the worst of the environmental damage from the stressed basin, particularly at the Coorong and Lower Lakes, where things became so dire that 5 species of native fish were taken from shrinking wetlands and bred in captivity until water returned to the system.
In the wild, there are around 50 of these fish remaining, so we've just returned 1,000 and we're really hoping that they'll do quite well.
We've got to a point in our history where there have been a series of compromises which have been damaging to this river, and there is now an opportunity to reset the rules, and we're going to seize that opportunity, and the Murray-Darling Basin Plan is the opportunity.
At the moment, both the fish and the farmers are getting enough water. But next week, the Basin Authority begins its attempt to find a long-term formula for them both to cohabitate.